I know what it's like to be that lean. I know you can literally wake up in the morning and think you look like absolute crap, and then eat a couple meals, go to the gym, and then feel like Mr. Olympia. In the same day, you literally gone from feeling terrible about yourself to feeling great about yourself. So the psychology of competitors, it's, you got to be able to help them take a step back and go, okay, well, you look terrible today, but look at all these variables that have changed.
And welcome to a new episode with Astrid, your dietitian with T, no C. And I am having a special guest today, which is Paul Revelia, and we are talking all things contest prep. Make sure you stay until the end because we're going to have a rapid Q&A between this or that. What is the best approach depending on the situation for either contest prep, peak week, or after show day? Hi, Paul. How are you?
Sorry about that. I guess I was out of date.
That's fine. I'm very excited to have the chance to chat to you and get right into lots of different questions I have for you about contest prep. Well, first, Paul, tell me a little bit about why you do what you do, why you decided to choose that career.
It kind of chose me. I got into competitive bodybuilding in my early 30s, and my first coach was Lane Norton. And so he was very helpful in kind of explaining to me why we did certain things, dismissing the approaches that a lot of the bodybuilders at the time were using. And there seemed to be a really large amount of growth in the industry around that time, around competing. And so Lane was getting so much interest, he really thought it would be a good idea if I coached. And I resisted for a while, probably over a year, maybe a year and a half even, before I took on my first client with his support. And from there, I just got kind of obsessive about learning more, wanting to understand things, attending seminars, going back to school, just kind of immersing myself, going to all the shows, competing even more times myself. And so, yeah, it's kind of been a slow, gradual evolution to where we're at.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, let me get into the hot topics. And this is going to be two parts. So part A is going to pretty much relatively short answers on things related to contest prep. And then we're going to have a short, sharp, rapid Q&A on this or that when it comes to choosing the right approach or what's the best approach for either contest prep, show day, or like peak week. All right, let's get into it. So the first part is, I have a couple of questions, and the first one is, what are the most common bodybuilding divisions? I know there are a few of them, and what is the most optimal depending on your body structure, when you are kind of choosing which one you should go for?
So I think the most important thing is to actually enter competition and see what kind of attracts your interest. There are very big differences between the divisions. As the sport has grown, and I think part of the reason the sport has grown is because there's more inclusive divisions. I think, when I was growing up, there was only one class, bodybuilding. That's it. Literally, that's all there was. For women, was women's bodybuilding. That was it. And then as the sport has grown and evolved over the years, now you have divisions that allow people to enter the sport that maybe don't have the muscle it takes to be a high-level bodybuilder, right? So going to a show, oftentimes, especially as a female, and I don't know if we're speaking more specifically to women here or men, but with women, divisions that, you can get into competing at an earlier time, such as the bikini division, which is probably the largest division now. Then as you add more muscle, you have opportunities to go into figure, women's physique. And then this year, the NPC in the United States has added a division called wellness, which already existed in Europe and Brazil, which that's basically probably the most extreme as far as lower body development as it relates to upper body, right? It's a huge imbalance. The lower body is way more developed than the upper body. And I think this is culturally in some areas, like Brazil, this is how they like to look. They prefer to have that look. So it's allowed for a more inclusive sport. Some people hem and haw, but I love when they figure out a way to make the sport more inclusive. So it's all about talking to the client, having them attend a show, which most of them have already done, and then seeing what they, what fits their, some girls love the hair, makeup, and heels, some don't, so it just depends what you're attracted to. Now, as a coach, what I'll do is I will look at your physique and give you my thoughts on what division suits you best, but it's really a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And when you look at a client and they come to you, how do you know the client is actually ready to do a contest prep? Because some people might want to do contest prep, but perhaps they not mentally ready, or perhaps they want to achieve this contest physique prep, but they're not really ready to do it.
Yeah, the most important thing is the initial phone call I have with every client is discussing expectations. If your expectation is to go out your first show and be the best competitor at the show, but you don't have the muscle or the metabolism or the experience to match that, I have to set expectations. So it's not on me to set the expectation. Okay. I am trying to make the expectation a reality. If someone tells me I don't want to get on stage until I'm ready to be the best competitor, I might tell them, okay, it's going to take a couple of years. I've literally had girls get off the stage and say, this is my next goal. And I say, okay, we need 2 years to reach that goal before you get on stage again. So really, some people just say, I want to get on stage. That's my goal. I don't care how I do. That's one expectation. Others might say, I just want to place at a show. Others might say, I just want to fit in. Others might say, I don't want to compete till I look like Miss Bikini Olympia, right? So it's all about the expectation for the individual. That's not on me to decide. My job is to take that expectation and set up the plan to get there. I help them with that vision and really particularly care what their goal is, as long as they're willing to work hard for it. I think over the years, now that I work with some, high level competitors, people assume like that's what I love, but no, like my high level competitors were once true novices, and I love that whole journey. So I love getting people at all ends of the spectrum.
When you get a client, do you generally have, on setting expectations, is there a specific time or like a timeline would you think it is most appropriate for a contest prep, whether it's 24 weeks or 12 weeks, to preserve lean body mass and just make it as the most optimal prep? What is your ideal time frame? I
mean, probably most commonly 16 to 20 weeks. I primarily work with women at this point. Women tend to stay a little bit leaner in between off seasons. They don't want to, put on as much body fat as men. Men typically probably 20 to 24 weeks. I know myself, I give myself 6 months to get in stage shape. I don't rush the process, but for my females, it all comes down to how much body fat they have till they're in condition and just setting the timeline, and then oftentimes, especially when you're working with girls that are trying to turn pro, we have to be ready for certain seasons. So we have to come out of our show with focus, and especially pros, you have to be ready to compete almost year round. So there's less time to kind of have the ups and downs of putting on body fat and coming down. But I would say a good typical approach would be 16 to 20 weeks. That allows for a couple diet breaks, life to happen, us to be aggressive when we need to be aggressive, recover when we need to be recovered, and still get on stage ready to go.
Are you that kind of coach that likes to get the client ready as fast as possible, so you can have a few weeks of like a couple of weeks with like maybe reverse the client to have a little bit of extra calories before they actually get into show day, or like maybe not as fast as you can, but like planning with more weeks, so you can get the client a bit more ready before the actual show, so they are in a much better metabolic position before they actually have to show up in show day. Yeah, so the best athlete on stage is the one that's bringing the food up. Okay, so if let's say you have two twins, if I'm able to take one of those people and then diet them into the show versus the other one that I diet them in, but a few weeks out we're able to take a diet break, reverse into the show. When food is going up and you're stage lean, it's just a much better look. It's a better recovery from the show. So absolutely, my goal is to have them ready early. I don't rush it. Like the thing that you worried me there was get them ready as fast as possible. But I will try to put them in a position to be ready early so that we can then bring food up, drop cardio down. Because once you're shredded, once you're stage lean, it becomes a whole different game. It becomes about putting them in the best position to look great on stage. And it's not always easy to navigate that, because sometimes, you're a few weeks out from a show and you're pushing people like it's the last week. But from experience, you get better if you do multiple shows. The reason you get better if you do multiple shows is because the week of the show is basically a recovery week, and then you go back into prep. And what I realized a few years ago was like, why are we waiting until the first show to take a recovery week, right? Okay, If this is truly a trend, then why are we waiting until the first show? We do it before the first show, and then we're actually better. Okay. So you're kind of saying that the first show is kind of a little bit of a prepping and practice before you actually get to on a second show or something like that? It can be. I mean, every peak week is different. As the body changes, the rules kind of change. So I don't typically try to make the first show a practice show, but let's say I have somebody getting ready for a big national show or a pro show. I'd like to have an opportunity to test things with them. If they're pro, we can't, because they're getting on a pro stage. So we'll actually run a test peak week, right, a few weeks out. But if they're getting ready for the national stage and we're going to be going to like a little regional show, then we'll absolutely use that as an opportunity. Let's see how this works, and we can tweak things from there. Okay, got it. And now when you are determining their initial like macronutrients, especially like calories they're going to utilize during the prep, what sort of approach or system do you generally use when it comes to determining their total calories, the deficit, how fast they should be aiming for to make sure they're preserving as much lean body mass as possible? what would be your approach or the systems you put in place with these clients?
Yeah, I'm essentially trying to lose fat at usually around 1% or less per week. Early on in prep, we might be losing weight a little bit quicker, but less body fat, it goes a little bit slower. All that is predicated on their off-season numbers or off-season cardio. So I always do if it's a new client, I'm actually interviewing them. I'm making them do a food recall. I want to know where their calories are, their cardio is, so we can start the plan according to where they're currently at. If it's one of my current clients, it's very easy because I've literally worked with them through the improvement season, and it's just as easy as flipping the switch. But my goal is slow, steady weight loss. I don't want to lose a lot of weight very quickly. I'd rather lose a little bit of weight very steadily over a long period of time. But you also have to take into account the psychology of the athlete. Some people prefer to be a little bit more aggressive. And for those individuals, I'll have a conversation with them and say, okay, here's how we're going to handle this. I'll be a little bit more aggressive here, but then we're going to have to take more recovery here. So again, there's not a one size fits all. And I wish I could give everybody a black and white answer, like this is how you do it. But you got to find a way with your clients to make sure that they're actually excited and they're buying into what we're doing. I do believe I have the best approach possible, but that doesn't mean I'm not open-minded to discussing what someone wants to do.
Yeah, no, 100%. And when you're saying that you tend to be very, obviously, as any coach, we want to try to individualize and focus on each client and what's best for them. How often do you think you generally implement changes or adjustments in their calories or macros or things like that?
Weekly. So we do, weekly updates. Yeah. And then, as we get closer to stage, once I have somebody very lean, I might be doing daily updates, every couple days. So, especially when I'm pushing someone pretty hard, I might just text them and say, hey, how are you today? I know we did 2 hours of cardio today. You doing all right? So the updates really are based on where we're at in the process. Off season, slowly adding food, hitting some PRs, definitely once a week. In prep, probably once a week to start. And then as we get closer to the shows and once we get into our season, it's pretty hands-on. It's pretty funny. I'll work with somebody through, multiple shows, and I'll realize I've spoken to that person every day for the last 2 months, and then their season's over. And then I'll be like, man, it's weird not talking to Maria every day. It's like this, it's this connection that you have with somebody that gets very close. So it's what they need from me and what I need from them to do my job, basically.
Yeah, I understand that you do like weekly updates, like checking with the clients, but also like doing changes perhaps in their calories or macros or whatever is in their plan. Are you making changes very often as well? Is needed, obviously, but like would be, yeah.
Usually once a week. I don't like to make changes too frequently because there's so many variables go into, let's say someone says, coach, I feel terrible today. I feel soft. The scale is up. Well, I don't want to make an adjustment just based on that information, especially if we just made an adjustment. I'm like, okay, I need a little more information. Is stress high? Is sleep good? Are we near your cycle? Like what potentially could be causing this? Especially if this person is telling me they're on plan. If you're up 4 pounds and you're on plan, it's water. Okay, we know our body's 75% water. So the biggest fluctuations can be water. It also can make you look softer. It can make you look harder. So I usually just say, okay, let's try to get some variables removed. Let's try to get a good night's sleep. Let's try to, take a day off of training, make sure we have inflammation down. And then if we see we're not making progress, then we'll be aggressive. But you can almost be too aggressive if you're looking at things every single day and basing on that. So I just try to get the big picture. And especially, I'm a competitor. I compete. I'm going to probably compete next year. I competed a couple of years ago. I know what it's like to be that lean. I know you can literally wake up in the morning and think you look like absolute crap, and then eat a couple meals, go to the gym, and then feel like Mr. Olympia. In the same day, you literally gone from feeling terrible about yourself to feeling great about yourself. So the psychology of competitors, it's, you got to be able to help them take a step back and go, okay, well, you look terrible today, but look at all these variables that have changed. Let's just hold off on adding cardio and dropping calories until we know more.
There's something that I really want to ask you, especially when it comes to experiencing with certain clients that probably are a little bit more difficult than others when it comes to their mindset and their approach to the scale. Some clients can get very fixated to the scale, and if they're not dropping well, they freak out if they're not dropping weight, or if things seem to not be changing as they are expecting to. So how do you deal with these situations when like it is so hard for them to get them convinced that yes, you're making progress, it's not just all about one way in, it is like there's so much more things you have to consider, and you have to still be consistent and stick to the plan? What do you do about that?
Well, first of all, you have to empathize, because we as competitors understand that we're trying to get leaner in prep. And You are tracking your diet, you're going to the gym, you're practicing your posing, you're getting your sleep, you're taking your supplements. The way a lot of us see progress is that scale. It's one way to go, okay, all these things I'm doing over here, it's working because this is happening. When the scale doesn't move, it almost feels like you're wasting your time. Like, why am I even working so hard? So this is when pictures and videos can do wonders. Okay. So, something I require in every week is pictures. And towards the end, I really like getting videos for my clients because sometimes pictures can be deceiving. And when you see someone move, you see the muscle fibers, you see their striations. So yeah, it's all about, again, setting the expectation that yes, although we do want the scale to change over time, that is not the only variable we're looking at. No one is going to check your weight on stage. It's about how you look. And this also can be difficult with the comparison game, right? I have people say like, hey coach, how tall is Naranjo? How much does she weigh? And I have to say, it doesn't matter. That's her height and weight does not relate to you. She is a different human being than you, right? So it's all about setting the expectation of, I'm not trying to get everybody to fit in the same box, and also understand that it's not just the scale. But that doesn't make it easier, right? We still want the scale to come down. So it's also understanding like, okay, sometimes we got to do what we got to do to get the scale to move.
Yeah, no, I agree. So 100%. And I find that there is sometimes a bit of a challenge when we're looking, especially working with female athletes. Some girls need to have some work in their physique, whether it is in terms of more muscle, more symmetry. Do you tend to emphasize more things on their training, or do you tend to kind of put more weight into nutrition, or you kind of think a little bit of both is really important for them to kind of modify some of these important things or changes in their body shape or symmetry or volume?
So I treat them as completely separate. It has one goal: put on muscle where you need to put it on. There is no part of going to the gym and lifting weights for me that is about losing body fat or getting leaner. Yes, it's going to change the way your body looks if you lift weights, but that's because you're going to increase muscle size, right? That's the goal. Likewise, I never have somebody do cardio with the goal of leaning out a specific body part. When people say, hey coach, what cardio should I do for my glutes and hamstrings? I say, it doesn't matter. Your glutes and hamstrings will get lean when you're leaner, not because of the exercise or the cardio that you're doing. People that are like, oh, I like to do the stair stepper because I feel it in my glutes. Great. Your body doesn't care. You're still going to lose all the fat on your face before your butt, right? I wish, and there's many variations in how people lose body fat. I literally have some people that have striated glutes before their abs come in, right? So, but it all tends to be around the middle: the abs, the lower back, the butt, the hamstrings, the thighs. That's where body fat tends to accumulate. One of those areas last, and helping people understand that it actually helps if you've been through it a few times, because you actually can predict like, oh, okay, I've lost all the fat in my shoulders. I know what's next. I know I'm going to start seeing my obliques come in, so, really experience is the best teacher. But, for me, cardio and diet are about getting body fat off, and the diet is about making sure you're performing well in the gym to build muscle. The gym is about building muscle and nothing else. I
agree. I think you have to think about gym as the best way possible to implement all the strategies you can to increase your muscle mass, protect or limit the muscle loss if you're in a calorie deficit. And if you're going to implement nutrition, that's when you start looking at losing fat, or like you manage your calorie deficit as well.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you one thing. When you're like, the more the client, the leaner it is, your client, do you generally tend to consider nutrient timing or more details a little bit more relevant as the client gets leaner?
Absolutely. So one of the common trends of someone that's leaner is that their energy will fade throughout the day. So my girl Kate just jumped on here, Kate from so she's stage lean right now, and we're just manipulating a few variables to just bring her in a little bit better for her next show. But I really encourage these competitors that are stage lean to start shifting their workouts at the times of day when they have more energy, because you don't want to try to work out at 5 o'clock at night if no matter what you do, you just feel like a zombie, right? And this is something that experience taught me. I used to be a nighttime guy. I used to work out at 5, 6 after work. Now I know if I wait for that time when I'm lean, the workouts are going to suffer. Also, we've all experienced this. The leaner you get, the more impact a meal will have on you. So you'll feel tired and you'll eat a meal and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I feel great. That doesn't necessarily happen when you got a little chub, when you got a little fat on your body, right? Like your body is just more stable with a little bit more body fat. So meal timing becomes important. The time that you train becomes important. setting up your schedule becomes important, making sure you're getting to bed on time, making sure, I even have some competitors that I have to tell them to stop drinking water at 5 o'clock in the afternoon because I don't want them waking up to pee 2-3 times a night. That interrupted sleep can really mess with you. So the leaner you get, the more finely tuned you get, the more you have to pay attention to those things. But luckily, in my experience, the leaner you get, the more anal you do become. I know for myself, the closer I get to show, I'm prepping all my own meals. I've got all my supplements laid out. I know exactly what time I'm going to bed, what time I become like I become a little bit anal in my routine versus when I'm not in prep and I'm a little more laid back.
You mentioned supplements. What sort of supplements do you think they are like a must do, especially to help you support your prep? Obviously, they are not like the main thing, but they might support somehow your prep and optimize certain things.
Yeah, I think that's something that's changed over the last couple of years because, working with core nutritionals, I've had the opportunity to get a little bit deeper into the new, I want to call them the new age supplements, right? When I was young, it was all stimulants, creatine, amino acids. Like that was like the big market for supplements. What I see now is the market for supplements is things that are slightly tweaking our body's ability to recover better, our body's ability to sleep better, perhaps benefiting us slightly hormonally, which is something that becomes very compromised as we get leaner, but also helping our digestion. Luckily, Doug worked with me on developing a vegan protein powder, and I'm not a vegan, but whey protein was destroying me. It was digestively wrecking me, and it took me a while to figure that out. And when you remove whey protein from a bodybuilder's diet, life gets tough. I had to constantly be thinking of ways to get in more protein when most guys were just running around throwing in 2 scoops and throwing it down. I could not do that. So the vegan protein for me has been a benefit, and it just so happens that I freaking love it. Like I'm literally addicted to it. But my number one supplements now are, first of all, would be Core Hard, which is an anti-cortisol, hormone kind of stabilizer for females and for males, right? So it actually, ashwagandha and dim, the ashwagandha actually reduces cortisol. Cortisol becomes elevated, especially the leaner we get, the more stress we have. The feedback that I get from my clients consistently, and even my wife, is that when they take Core Hard, they don't have as hard a reaction to bad news. They sleep, and those two things can have a huge impact on somebody that's lean. If you imagine just reducing your anxiety slightly, I think it kind of blunts the response to anxiety and stress. The new product that we just came out with is called Core Poise. This is something that I worked with Doug on when he asked me like what were some holes I saw in the supplement world that weren't being filled. And this one is really to support the female cycle, okay? And really put women in a position to have a better thyroid function throughout contest prep, right? Because as food becomes restricted, it's hard to get all the things from food that we need to support those functions. This is where supplements work. They're not magic, right? They're just helping us fill in little gaps. So Core Poise, and I'm still getting feedback on this, it's going to benefit the female cycle. So less dramatic, less painful cycles. The symptoms should be less. And then also promote positive thyroid function, right? And those are the things that we worry about as competitors from the female side.
Okay. What about creatine? Do you use that at all, or like they still?
My phone is literally sitting on my creatine monohydrate. That is all you need. Take 3 grams if you're a girl, 5 grams if you're a guy every day. Put it in your pre-workout shake. Put it in your breakfast. It doesn't matter. Take creatine every day. It's just proven to be beneficial.
That's a good follow-up question I have. That has been something that I have been struggling a lot, is to be consistent with creatine, because I also have my pre-workout powder. Can you mix it together so you have only one powder once and not like, because I struggle to stay consistent with 2. Like I just don't like to be drinking so much supplements.
Well, most pre-workouts contain creatine. It's very inexpensive. I think the one I've got here is 400 grams of creatine, which lasts me months. Costs $19, I think, US. So you're talking that thing. It's free basically. There's no cost there for the value that you get out of it. Most pre-workouts, when you buy them, they're going to be more expensive than creatine monohydrate, and they're going to have 3 to 5 grams of creatine in them, right? So the real value is that it's going to help you and be very cheap. But I have the same problem. Sometimes I forget to take it. That's why it's literally sitting on my desk. Okay, along with. So this is another one, Laxogenin, Corbolic. This is another product. So I keep these on my desk for this very reason. And this is Core Flex. This is our joint supplement. So, sometimes supplementation, it's a matter of like remembering your routine. So I keep these things handy for that exact reason. And, I keep the creatine right with my protein powder because I just throw it in there and it's easy to remember. Because I only really take pre-workout every day in prep. In the off season, I try to taper off it a little bit.
Yeah, although there are like these two type of pre-workouts, the ones that are trying to kind of come out to the market that are very low or no caffeine, but it's more like citrulline and beta-alanine and others potential performance aids that could just make your workout a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I don't know, would you consider using that stimulant-free pre-workout?
Yeah.
Or you still stay away from it?
Yeah, stimulant-free workouts, Core Nutritionals has one called Core Pump for that very reason. Sometimes you're going to work out late in the day and you don't want to be up till 2 in the morning, right? So the most important thing is, okay, are you getting the ingredients from the pre-workout that do help? They do add value. They help with fatigue resistance. They help with hydration. Obviously, if there's creatine in there, it helps like that. So Pump is the product that we do use for that purpose. And sometimes what's funny is I'll actually mix Pump with the Core Fury, right? So you're just getting some extra dosage in there. You know, fortunately for me, I have access to all the great supplements. So it can come down to cost, what's important to you. But for me, the Core Pump is something that I take in my pre-workout probably more frequently than Core Fury right now for that reason. I'm trying not to overstim myself so I have a good, response to it when I need it.
Okay. How are you with time? Because I have the last part that I want to make sure you are good to go.
Yeah, I'm good.
You good? Okay. So I have one more question and then we jump to part B. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So the last question is, in case some of your clients get to maintenance, they're not prepping for a show anymore. They struggle to find something to keep showing up. Coming up with a new goal is really, really hard. But what would be the conversation you have with this client if another prep is not appropriate or something that they shouldn't be considering right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest change in my coaching approach over the last couple of years is as the competitions have ended, I've really wanted to find that next goal for them, because what I notice is people that have a goal execute much better. And my goal as a coach is to have my people checking in and have them executing. If they're kind of drifting and they don't know what they're doing, that becomes difficult. This is something I even noticed with myself. After my competition seasons would end, I would kind of go in the gym. Some days I would cut it short. I would add food to my diet or miss a meal. Like you just don't have that laser focus like prep. So the great thing about bodybuilding is that there's almost always a next goal. I don't know too many people that don't have a next goal. The Mr. Olympias, the Miss Olympias, their goal is to win the next one, right? So they have a goal. So once the shows are over, if you set that next goal, that really helps. If you say, okay, we just got done, you competed in bikini and novice and won, in open you got 5th. Next year we're coming back and our goal is to win your open class, contend for an overall, and potentially go to nationals. If that's your thinking every day when you walk into the gym, every day when you make a decision with your meal prep and with your food, things go much better. Okay. Now, if you're talking about goals outside of bodybuilding, I have some people that do Spartan races, some people that try to get into CrossFit, some people that get into, fitness shoots. Anything that you can do that's going to keep you excited about your daily routine is going to help. Even if that's, okay, I want to switch over and try some powerlifting, there's a multitude of things that you can do. And honestly, a lot of my coaching these days is about that. Macros and cardio, those are skills that a lot of people have. I've learned a lot about how to keep people motivated, and that's where I think coaching evolved over the last couple of years. I'm not just a macro calculator, right? I'm a, like a fitness life coach, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of being a coach, that it just goes beyond just calculating macros that you can just get from a macro calculator or just from an app that just gives you everything you need to know about your calories, your macros, and what you need to do with that, but not necessarily the mindset aspect. I think that's the most powerful thing that you can get from a coach, is that support, that accountability, that emotional connection. I think that's so powerful. That's something that you would probably get it from an app or from a computer.
Some people might not need that. There's different levels of what people need, but for me as a coach, the thing that I enjoy at this point in my evolution as a coach is being at the shows, being in the journey with my competitors and with my clients. Anyone that's ever been in a show with me knows I get so much anxiety, and it's because I'm so invested in the result, probably more than they are in a lot of cases. And I'm, just wanting to see them get what they are fighting for. So yeah, the coaching is absolutely, there's a huge variation in what to expect. And that's why it's important to, if you're looking for a coach, speak to them, understand that they get you and you get them.
As a coach, do you get very emotionally connected with your client, in a lot of senses?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't talk
invested
because it's not, I don't know. I just don't talk about a lot about the side of coaching that's very difficult because, well, first of all, I love what I do and it's my choice, but I have a lot of sleepless nights. You know, I've had situations where I put clients in shows that I had second guess, that they didn't get the result they want, that I think we peaked improperly, that we took some chances and missed. And I promise you, I don't sleep that night. And it's for that reason. I feel like, you know, in some cases I let them down. But on the other end, you know, we're in it together. And my goal is to put them in a position to succeed. And we have these discussions. And if something's off, I really take that to heart, right? It really, you know, gets me down. But then, you know, there's also the other moments where, you know, great things happen and you're just on this high. So I've learned to kind of not get too high off the wins and not get too low off the losses. Try to learn from both and come back better. That's really what this stinking sport is about. Nobody wins every show, but sometimes it's hard for me to accept.
No, I think that's great. And that's what makes us vulnerable and emotional. And that's part of being a coach. I think if you're a human and you connect with your clients, that's the beauty of being a coach as well. So it's a good journey for you as well as a coach.
Yeah, you know, life can give you a little bit of pain every now and then, but I don't know. My coping mechanism is just to remind myself that pain is being alive. Like, it's the pleasure of life that you get to have pain, that you get to go through these ordeals. Not everyone gets to have struggles. So weird as it sounds, sometimes I appreciate the struggles. And when you look back and you realize how you've overcome them, those are some of the best moments.
They make you thrive. They make you better in all senses.
Yeah, you know, it still hurts, but you still gotta you gotta realize what that feeling means, right? When people tell me on show day, coach, I'm so nervous, I'm so anxious, I go, good. That's the feeling of being alive. You're doing something that matters to you. If you were sitting on your TV, you wouldn't be nervous. No one cares about the people sitting on their couch watching TV. Great, you're having a nice day, but we're actually doing something that's actually changing our body chemistry, even if just 2 hours, a few days. That's fucking awesome. I love that.
Yeah, I'll get to the last part of our conversation, which is about explaining the rationale if I ask you, is this or that? And that's probably referred to contest prep or show day or like peak week. What is your preferred method, or what is the ideal strategy?
And I have.
So the first one is fasted cardio or fed cardio.
Fasted cardio first thing in the morning, fed cardio any other time of day.
Yeah, which one do you think it is most appropriate?
Well, I think they're both appropriate. It's just situational. So I do fasted cardio, but that's because I don't want to eat something at 5:30 in the morning. You know, I used to put on my plans never do fasted cardio because I bought into the whole you need to eat before you do cardio. But something funny happens when you try to eat something at 5:30 in the morning and then you do cardio. You're starving the rest of the day. So I just prefer to do my first meal after my cardio. It's not because I think that fasted cardio is somehow magical. I still believe in the 24-hour window, but you know, I like doing my cardio fasted in the morning, but if I do cardio in the evening, I'm not worried that I ate something that somehow ruins my cardio. So.
Okay. If you had to pick between BCAAs and essential amino acids, what would you pick?
BCAAs. It's not even close. Yeah.
So this or that, which one do you get to stick to?
Branched chain amino acids. Absolutely.
Okay. Why did you choose that?
I mean, just basically on the research that's been conducted, there's a really good article on the Core Nutritionals website that, you know, that discusses why branched chain amino acids are more important than essential amino acids for bodybuilders and the purpose that we use them for. We're not trying, essential amino acids essentially are trying to replace like our protein powders and things like that. So taking the branched chain amino acids between meals and intra-workout, those are the three amino acids, leucine, isoleucine, and valine, that get depleted and we need to replenish them. So yeah, for me, it's always been branched chain amino acids. And for me, it also just helps me remember to be hydrated. You know, there's multiple benefits to them, and I notice when I don't take them.
Okay. I asked that question because so many people and so many coaches say, like, you're just wasting your money using BCAAs. I guess they might have their place and their time when they become more useful than other times, obviously. The cleaner
you are, I think there's an inverse relationship to their value because, you know, depending on how much food you're eating and what your feeding windows look like, you know, for me, I eat about 4 meals a day. So I like to get my amino acids in between those meals because they're 4 to 5 hours apart. If I was eating every 3 hours, I would never take amino acids. But also the leaner I get, the more value I have because, you know, talking about proteins, the benefits of that as our bodies are literally just running on fumes. So that's where I get the value.
Okay. And if you were to choose instead of essential amino acid, we were going to say like protein in total, like total protein intake versus just BCAAs? If you were to choose, not to choose, but like, what would be the most important thing for you? Is that the total protein intake, even if you don't have BCAAs?
Yeah, BCAAs are just like the sprinkles on the icing on the cake. The cake would be the protein powder, right? So if you're not getting adequate protein and you're just trying to sprinkle in some BCAAs throughout the day, that's not going to do anything.
Yeah. All right. If you, when it comes to the lead of the show, do you drop the water and salt, or you keep water and salt as normal, especially for peak week and show day? Yeah.
So carbohydrates, water follow each other. So when my carbohydrates go up, my sodium and my water goes up. Now this is for contest prep individuals who are already in shape, right? If you have fat cells still left on your body, you can look worse with more water and salt. If you are shredded, you will only look worse with less water in your body, right? So it's all about understanding where this competitor is, what division they're in, and every peak week is going to be different from person to person. But my favorite method of peaking, and I talked about this many times, is called linear progressive loading, where I'm increasing carbohydrates every day going into the show. And along with that, water is going to be stable, sodium is going to be stable. But when we get close to the stage, water and sodium are actually what's going to fill us out on the day of the show, right? So carbohydrates are loaded. Now we just need to make sure we're hydrated. Solutes are going to follow. Water is going to follow the solutes, right? So where the carbs go, the sodium is going to take them to the muscles. The water is going to follow that. Carbohydrate, you know, a lot of people don't even realize that word means what it means, because it pulls water into the muscle cells.
Yeah. So leading to the show, you will increase a little bit more the sodium, or we'll just keep it the same?
Yep.
Yeah, a little bit more.
Everybody listening here has gone out after a show and had sushi or a hamburger or some French fries, and their veins start popping, and they go, "Oh, I didn't have enough carbs." False. You just had a salty margarita, or something that really pumped up your sodium, and that's what's causing that rapid blood volume increase.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, when it comes, well, I think you already mentioned it, carb front loading or back loading.
Yeah.
For the peak week.
That I did at my first show. As Lane was my coach. So sorry, my wife is texting me. So what I really noticed was when I did the front load with Lane, I looked great on like Wednesday, Thursday. And then I would just start to get gradually worse. And then we would bring food back up on Friday and I would look pretty good, but never as good as I looked on that like day after or 2 days after the high day. So I don't really do a front load because it becomes unpredictable. The godfather of modern contest prep is Dr. Joe Klemczewski. And he's somebody that, he was Lane's first coach. He's not as vocal. He's not putting a lot of information out there. He's just, he's got multiple PhDs, runs businesses. He's not putting effort into content, but the man is a genius, right? So I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, I'm having trouble peaking a couple clients." And he said, "Well, here's how I do it." And he explained it to me that muscles, if you visually think of them as a balloon, what you're doing with a front load is you're actually filling out the balloon and then it's slowly coming back down. And then you're trying to figure out on show day to add food or subtract food. He's like, why not just constantly be increasing the size of the balloon? So the linear load does that. So yeah, so the high day on Monday, the problem is it becomes a little bit unpredictable. Yeah, you look better than somebody that's completely depleted, but you don't look as good as somebody who has carbs consistently going up. That's my opinion.
Okay. For show day, do you like to stay away from fiber completely, or do you add some fiber to it? Yeah,
so my peaking plans, I send out a questionnaire. So all my clients get a questionnaire, 2 weeks, 10 days, whatever, out before the show. And I ask them what foods they normally eat. One of my mistakes in early preps was I would give people a list of foods to eat on show day, not really knowing like if they ever ate those anymore, right? Lane gave me a sandwich on my show day with cheese on it, and I didn't realize I had become lactose intolerant, right? So I bloated terribly, and I didn't know why. Only looking back and realizing, man, I haven't had cheese or dairy in like months. And to add it back in on show day was disastrous, right? Luckily, things still went well, but I just noticed I didn't feel as good as I did in the morning, right? It just got gradually worse. So now what I do is I send this questionnaire out and I give you a peak week show day meal plan. Now, I'm not a meal plan coach. I don't tell everybody to eat the same foods. But on show day, the goal is not necessarily to be like taking in a ton of food. It's to maintain your condition, maintain your fullness. If you pull out a bunch of foods that have sodium in them that people normally eat, well, they're going to be depleted of sodium, right? If you tell somebody not to have coffee, they're going to get a headache, right? So I want to keep show day as normal as possible. Now, if they normally eat a cup of broccoli, yeah, probably not going to have that on show day. But that's why I have them send me a questionnaire, and I just try to get some common foods that they eat, and I give them a meal plan of foods that they digest well, that are going to keep their sodium levels consistent. And I want them to feel good. Like I want them to eat something and know confidence, right? You got to manage the psychology of the prep athlete. If you ask them to do something they haven't done in a long time, that's going to cause stress. Stress, cortisol. Cortisol, water. You don't want looking worse.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, with a contest prep as such, or even looking at peak week, what are you most inclined to use, high carb or low carb diets?
And you said in peak week?
In peak week, also in prep in general.
Well, I like to keep carbs as high as possible, but they're also the largest variable in our diet. You know, we can't go low protein. We can't go zero fat, right? We have to keep fat, you know. So once we bottom out fat, once you have your protein stable, carbohydrates are going to be the biggest variable. So I consider myself a high carb coach. You know, my goal is, you know, even with a 100-pound girl, is to have her on 200-300 grams of carbs a day before a show. You know, some might consider that extreme, but that's because they had 250 the day before that, 200 the day before that. You know, we're gradually walking them up, and I'm checking in on them every single day to make sure that they look good, they feel good, that they look good in the gym, that their posing is going well. So it's a very predictable approach. It's not like I'm just taking somebody on low carbs and throwing high carbs at them. So to me, carbohydrates are the biggest variable in prep and in peak week. That's the one thing that I really manipulate the most of. I try to keep most things steady. Carbohydrates get the most variation.
Okay. Artificial sweeteners or nothing at all during prep and peak week?
Let's see. Well, I don't have a Mountain Dew handy, but I'm all about the artificial sweeteners. I'm all about Walden Farms, and yeah, I don't discriminate against any of that. Now, maybe on show day we're not going to have any because I don't want people having like something with carbonation in it, coffee, and they want Splenda in it. No problem. Yeah, if you're having it every day, keep it. That's my philosophy.
Okay, so if it's normal to you, you're used to have it, there's no problem to have that. Okay, if using creatine, do you cut it out or keep it during peak week?
Keep it.
Keep it? Okay.
Yeah, creatine. So even if you cut it out, you're not really going to be losing creatine. You know, if you don't want to take it on show day or the day before, it's going to have zero impact on your physique. You know, sometimes you just take it out just because you don't need it. Like, it's just, you don't need to put it in.
Okay. Reverse dieting or recovery diet post-show?
You know, I kind of have a new approach. Basically, what I just described to you was a diet break post-show. So when my clients are walking carbohydrates going up into a show, let's say, you know, I have Lauren on 320 grams of carbs going into her show on Friday. That's where we start her off season.
Okay.
So, you know, it's all about, for me, putting a person in position to work towards their next goal. You know, I'll say this, my clients usually feel pretty damn good going into shows. Even though their body fat is low, food is up, cardio is down, recovery is good. So you're really focusing on the specifics of the individual, but I don't label it as a reverse diet. I don't label it as a recovery diet. It's basically a diet break, and then we go from there based on their goals. Okay, so how long would that diet break would be for? Well, most of my clients are probably taking in more carbohydrates going into their off season than they were going into prep. So there's this weird metabolic window that you can get into where you're actually increasing food and decreasing body fat. This is the benefit of being stage ready early and bringing food up, right? You'll actually continue to get leaner because other markers improve, your sleep improves, your hormones improve, your recovery improves. So even though it doesn't really technically make sense that you added a couple hundred calories and you're still losing body fat, it's because our metabolism is so dynamic. You're changing the mechanisms of the metabolism. It's not a math equation where people say, well, like, I'm burning this many calories and I'm taking this many calories. No, like, there are so many internal processes going on. And when you change those, when you change something like sleep, when you change something like recovery, you can speed the metabolism up faster than you can add calories, right? So the goal is to put them in a position where they're eating so much food going into their off season. I'm not necessarily worried about raising the food up. It's, you know, it's managing them from week to week. We still do weekly check-ins, but I want to make sure that they're happy. If someone tells me that they want to stay a little bit leaner, I support that. If someone tells me that they want to put on body fat quickly, I support that. But I tell you this, going through diet breaks throughout the prep process has changed the way women respond to contest prep. I'm not running them into the ground. They're not destroyed. They're not binging. They're enjoying coming out of the show and having the freedom of not having to be maybe so calculated with their diet, but they feel better. And, you know, a lot of my, Kendra's on here for me too, you know, and Kate's on here. You guys can chime in, like, going into a show, reversing into the show, it just changes the outcome after the show. Yeah. So would you say then that for your female clients, their prep will be much longer than for a male, for example? No. Like I said,
The same.
women tend to stay a little bit leaner.
Yep.
Us men, we do not care about a little bit of dad bod, right? Women don't want to go from a size 2 to a size whatever 8. I don't know what's a bad size. Oh, sorry, if size 8 is not a bad size. I don't know sizes, but you know what I'm saying? Like most of my women clients will say like, hey coach, I'm going on a cruise this summer. I don't want to lose my shit. I want to stay tight. I want to look good. And that helps me. I'm like, great, check in. Here's your food. Now, if they say, coach, you know, I'm really tired this week, let's go ahead and add some food. Who cares if you gain a pound or two, right? We got to try to find that balance. But this is where communication comes in. And that's where the initial phone call matters. I need to know what's going on with you. I don't judge people based on gaining and losing weight. I judge people based on what the parameters are they gave me. If you tell me your goal is to stay lean, but then you check in and say, well, sorry, coach, I haven't tracked for a few days and I'm up 5 pounds. I'll say, okay, are you okay with that? I don't care. That's your choice. You give me the parameters on how we're doing this, and then I will help guide you. And I'll also slap you and say, hey, you told me this is what you want. Do you really want this? If not, let me change my parameters.
That's perfectly what I think it is appropriate way to be a coach, is letting your clients like be the drivers, and you're kind of the one who tells them where to see, what to look, how to do things without interfering in what they want. But you can also give your guidance and your professional opinion of, well, this is what you wanted, and I don't think you're heading in the right direction unless you're happy
Absolutely
to change plans.
And sometimes, you know, those are tough conversations, but as a coach, I've earned that right to say my opinion. I always say it respectfully, but you know, sometimes I have to stand up for myself and what I actually believe is happening. And I promise you, every single time, in the long run, it comes out right. Even if in the short term you hurt somebody's feelings or they weren't ready to hear you be honest.
I agree. Now, my last question is for you, Paul. Is there any new project, anything that you're looking for to do in the next couple of months?